Yak aya yaksatini as hintade aya shakachtuchij yaltakatuhan tel kayek hakwati talk aya kone yachikachtune chate na ukaw itkechat putien yayaki chaan ko ate hasye jiwun de ye has jiwune hach tu yik edat ye awa hasakewus yateksawe we shkun ade aya gachtu sa ye awa adati tuchtatan yateach shkun kudi shkun yeti shkun katsku shkun plain. So we were talking. We got a late start today, so we're jumping right in. Talking about what to call different school levels, and then this is what I was proposing: was skun kudi for preschool, which is like a school nest; skun yeti for elementary school, which would be school child; skun katsku for middle school, which would be adolescent. And I think that could apply to a junior high school as well, if those still exist. I think there's a different grade levels in each of those. Skun for high school, skun plain for college, which would be big school, middle school being adolescent school or school adolescent. And then there was a question about, well, isn't there a term for this age group? And so now we're doing age groups. We got tukane, atkatsku, atyetki, or adatki, shatkatsku, yatakotsku, shat, yatak, yishawat, yiskha. So now's a good time to talk about life stages and making sure. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to talk about what life stage is this, and is there, we'll just talk about them as we go through. So what is the first one? Tukane?
Baby.
Baby.
Maybe a lap child.
Yeah, so in my mind, not walking.
Okay.
I think tukane until they're walking. When they're walking, they shift to atkatsku, or, well, they shift. So these next two are talking, they're a little different. Like these ones are all life stages, right? So these are life stages, and these top two here are a little different. So what is atkatsku and atyetki or adetki?
Adolescent thing and a child thing?
Yes, so those are, okay, so adolescent thing. We're going to put these in parentheses.
Yeah.
And then the parentheses are kind of showing us the literal interpretation. And then right before it is, what are these? Does anybody know what the difference is between these two?
Tukane and Katsku?
No, atkatsku and atyatki. What do you see about them that's different? And I guess the meaning is different, sure. Any guesses? What does this one have that this one doesn't? Not talking about the meaning.
But just
Maybe that?
You mean the way it's spelled?
Kinda. If you really look at this thing, that does something different, right? Is your big hint.
Does that mean it's plural?
Yes. So child and children. Just something to keep in mind, because if you're talking about some child over there, it's atkatsku. If you're talking about those children, it's atyetki or adatki. So they're singular and plural, but they both are just generally referring to, and it's interesting too, because it does mean adolescent something and child of something or children of something. But even though those are the, so I guess you might say this one is more like things, children. literally. Okay. So now we get into life stages. So going through Shatkatsuku or Shatkiyatsuku. What is that one?
Female.
We could probably just grab this, right? Talking about life stages. Oops. Yadakatsuku or Yadakatsuku. We'll go Katsuku, keep it similar. What is that one?
Little
Male
boy.
adolescent.
Yeah, just, sticking with, and so we're kind of doing, I guess these are in the parentheses. So, boy, I don't know, girl, shatk and yadak.
Good night.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Boys aren't female and girls aren't male generally.
Oh, there we go. Jeez. Yeah, away. Okay, so if walking kind of puts them into this Katsuku category, what do you think puts them into the next one? What's your next major growth phase?
Talking.
Say it again.
Talking.
Not quite talking. It's probably a farther life concept than that.
Puberty.
Yes. So that's why I think akshatki and akhyadaku is typically how you'd say my boyfriend and my girlfriend. So once they've passed puberty and they could technically make babies, then that's when you switch it to this one. So here you could have, again, like I don't know, what's our English terms going to be for these? What do you think?
Teenager.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Does it imply youth, young? So young, like young woman, young.
Yeah. So we could say young.
George Davis has a term that he says he was a teenager in one of the conversations.
Yeah, so these are probably teenage years. And then I think once you're at the later teenage years, but maybe not quite fully considered, I guess this one might be young adult. I guess would be the English equivalent, maybe. And so and so there is, like, I do think this is kind of high school age, but I don't know. So what this one has this Katsuku attached to it, which makes it easy to name the school after them. Then, I guess Yiskun or Skunk, little school. Because if you wanted to, because I think this is just how they do it in Hawaii as well. It's where I kind of got the idea, was they say Kulanui, big school, and that's college. And that includes undergraduate, graduate, and PhD programs. So they probably have words for each of those individually, but I think their thought was you have finished school and now you're into this kind of optional phase. So it's good questions. Other thoughts or questions on that?
I'm trying to say I have a question for you.
ʻaduwóos'i.
ʻaduwóos'i. Shotki ka yadak'i
Yadaku.
yadaku. How do you spell that? Where do you?
Yep. So that's the relational forms. And then that usually means you're at the dating phases.
Gonna cheat.
Ah. Okay. Gonna cheat plain. Okay, so you folks are, I think once we get done with these videos, we're about halfway done perhaps with one of them. Hopefully we'll get, I think in the interest of time, we'll just do video number 1 tonight and see how far we get. And then we'll start on 2 and 3 on Wednesday. But after we're done with these, there's a couple things that I want us to do. One is getting back to a few structural elements, like back to grammar, back to how to form sentences, how to adjust verbs. But then also I want us to listen to something that's recorded a little bit more recently and is maybe slower paced and content-wise not as intense, like stories about the flood and stories about this Kitguni are pretty big stories. And so the other thing I want us to do is to focus on your 1-minute conversations, and we'll shift towards that so we're working on our listening and comprehension skills. Then we're going to work on our speaking and translating skills. So that's kind of the plan that might get us through the rest of the semester. And then we'll check in though now and then to see how everybody's doing, make sure everybody's okay, trying to make progress in these we're kind of focused on these 3 areas, right? So comprehension, speaking, and then grammar. So those are the sort of 3 things that are driving us right now. And then just general question and answer. And I really appreciate what ʼaduwatánk has to show us. And we might invite some other language teachers in to show us some of the things that they're doing for folks who are starting to put the language together themselves. And, our goal is to just continue to learn and learn about how all the books work and then to get off the books. And so we'll also have some time to talk this semester about what would a 4th-year language program look like. We don't fully have one. The idea would be to use the language to talk about a lot of content. And so that's in development, but that would require someone to take over intermediate. So any questions or concerns about your translation work with anyone who's working on recording 1? Okay, I opened Elan and it suggested I download version 6.7, which I did, but I'm not going to mess around with it while we're in class. So this is where we left off. We're at the 2.5-minute mark, which is not quite halfway through. So we're going to listen to it, and you're going to tell me what you folks are hearing. Oh, I didn't hear anything. Oh, hold on. I know what's going on. Maybe, is this going to work? Okay. Do you guys hear that?
Like,
Okay, good, because I didn't either. So it's not just me. I'm not crazy. Okay, hold on. Because I've got a different. Okay, let's try this. Did you hear that? Okay. Let me try something here. Okay, so it does say Sachishtin. Okay. I don't know if I could do that.
ʼaitx.
How do you say yan kanajuk?
You'd say yeah, kind of joke. Okay, so hold that thought. I think I have to grab a microphone now. Okay, this is getting complicated. Because I've got two different audio sources. Okay. Hold on one second. Okay. Gwash hetwasakwatidat. So he says, ayu aka ikachtaka, which I do think was an undocumented verb. And then that gets us to here, which now I can't hear. Can you hear it?
Like,
Technology.
Okay. Do I have to do? Okay, I think I know what I have to do. This will be weird. Okay. Let me try something. Make Gusa.
ʼaitx.
Yeah, okay.
ʼaitx.
Agish.
ʼaduwóos'i.
Like in that's the way.
With my dad.
ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i. ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i. ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i. ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i. ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i.
is that hash?
ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i.
There's one thing I think I'm hearing here that I want to confirm. Oops.
In the middle, is it heen?
Yeah.
ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i.
Yes. Ye heen.
Now this is
Us.
what's that?
Astu.
ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i.
It ends with that.
Duka.
Well, I think you have one of two things here. I think it's either this
ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i.
or
Yes.
it's that.
Kátluknúch.
ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i.
Gosh, slow it down.
Mhm.
ʻaduwóos'i ʻaduwóos'i.
I think it is chasuknuch.
Yet ye. Yeah. I always sip hot water. I always sip tea.
We're going to go with the, and so we might come back and change this to tea or coffee. It's possible. We might just leave it though.
We yatayi yet aadé.
Lam ganchish.
ʻachtachot.
Okay, we're going to grab the next one because he might start over.
ʻachtachot. ʻetusukun ʻaduwóos'i. ʻachtachot. ʻahtaats'kut,
Ach, something.
Hot.
Touch. Yeah.
Hotch.
Aadé.
ʻahtaats'kut,
What would that be? What do you think?
Ach, klar.
ʻahtaats'kut,
Okay, we're gonna go.
Arch.
Klatsch.
T. Ah.
ʻahtaats'kut,
I mean, Ťaach, but that would be like my board, I don't. We're making a bit of an approximation here by putting claw in there. It would make sense.
ʻahtaats'kut,
It's coming out very fast. So let's see what's next, and then come back.
tetusukun at aihin. Tetusukun at aihin.
Sesushugu yat aihin.
Tetusukun at aihin. Tetusukun at aihin. Tetusukun at aihin.
It sounds like ushuku, which is, I don't know why that would be on there.
ʻahtaats'kut,
Perhaps switching to talk about my mom didn't like hot water.
Hey, is that yata yatayi? That last one, you can almost hear an N, like natayi.
tetusukun at aihin.
Yutayi.
Is that just almost like an old way to pronounce that? Yeah, like a.
Tetusukun at aihin.
Like it's almost nasalized, you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty close, yeah. And so I didn't put, if you wanted to mark a nasalized thing, like if you're clearly hearing like yitang heen, then you could put the tilde over the top of the Y, which is an option. I think I'd recommend just kind of leaving it like this for now. But if you're giving a close listen and you're doing your own transcription and translation work, and you say, I want to make sure we're capturing this dialect thing, like when people say ging danak in Teslin, or they'll say yak ehat ying adi, where it sounds a lot like an NG type of sound to those of us who maybe are new to that dialect. That's how we're recommending you write it, as a Y with a tilde over it. Which reminds me, I've got to install Popcar on this new computer. Thank you for pointing that out. Just so folks know, this is what this program looks like. It's called Popcar. I think that's how you'd pronounce it. Character is what I think it is. So I don't know if it's Popcare. It is $40. But if you're doing a lot of work in the language, it does have some things that aren't in the Crippen keyboard that are pretty handy. But not a requirement by any means. Okay, let's move.
What are some other things that it has? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, it's what I use. Let's see. The only thing I'd need that for, I think I've used it to manually insert underlines in programs like Adobe InDesign, which doesn't allow for combined keystrokes, which is what the Crippen keyboard does. I've used it to do the little X to mark the invariable stem. I have used it to use superscript characters so that the like if you look at the verb dictionary, if you look at the dictionary that I'm working on, the homonyms are superscript numbers. So they're not, so if you copy and paste them directly from the program itself, or from something that was, usually if you export it to a PDF, if you copy and paste them, they look like just regular numbers.
I bought it maybe 2 weeks ago to do that underline O in any line, eh? So
Yeah, I think it works great. I mean, but if you're not doing those types of things, you might not, it's $40, so, but it is a one-time purchase. You don't have to, I've never had to renew it.
Do you use it instead of the Crippen
No.
keyboard?
No. Only if I'm working in Adobe, like I think Photoshop and Illustrator and Design, I'll require you to use that. But in that case, I'll usually type the stuff somewhere else and then copy it and paste it in. Okay. Next sentence. Oh, is there another question?
ʼaduwatánk ʼaduwóos'i suknúch. ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch. ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch.
What are we hearing?
Heen,
Check the chat.
Ťaďukáwo.
ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch.
Hín a suknúch.
ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch.
I'm hearing it before keen. I just can't tell what I'm hearing.
Probably this. And one more word.
ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch.
Oh, two more words.
yeah.
One right here. One right here.
ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch.
Yatai.
I would expect yatai, but he's saying yawutai for some reason. And so that's a case where I'm going to write it the way I hear it. And then I'll just say, okay, that's something, I would make a note for that. Like I would expect yatai, but he's clearly saying yawutai.
ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch.
But it could also be
Huh?
yawutai.
Huh? Like huh?
Yeah.
ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch.
And some
Oh.
speakers, you'll hear them say ʻaduwóos'i real fast. Like you could write it like that, maybe. And this is like another one of those standardization questions. But then some of them you'll clearly hear them say that when they're really in a flow. But I do hear ʻaduwóos'i. I hear that little break in there.
ʼaduwatánk ʻaduwóos'i suknúch.
Okay. How are we going to translate that one, folks?
Is that like a long time ago?
Well, you got chak is chagu. Chagu turns it into an adjective. And then chagakawu.
Old people.
Yeah, so you say people of long ago, maybe. It depends on how it's being used, right? Because you could say chagakaweha. That's a person of, they're born a long time ago. But a lot of times in these instances, when people just start a sentence with that, you're probably talking about the people a long time ago.
They sipped hot water all the time.
Yeah. And we have this chus up there, which you could generally translate as just or only. So you could say they just always sipped hot water. They always sipped just hot water. They always just sipped hot. You know, we could go here, here, or here. I'll put it here for now, and we could change it later too.
And just to be clear, he's talking about hot water, not chayu.
See what he says next. That might answer your question.
Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin.
Chayu?
Atagat aihin asuknuch. Akish kayeta tukanuch.
Coming up. So there is this, I think, I don't know, it's coming.
Kandat atayach yaniko kak takondat takyat aihin asuknuch. Yuwata tukani. Teshat aihin to sukunchak you. Tes kafe. Teshat aihin to sukunchak you. Tes kafe. Tea to take. The singed at the wine. Atayo hasi at the hanging.
So I do think he comes around to saying something about not coffee and not tea.
Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin.
There's a couple of complicated things in here.
Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin.
Achia.
Say it again.
Achia.
Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin.
Something. Get to the end.
Tatuyat aihin. Tuyat aihin.
We're going to get to this. And there's a couple things here in the middle.
Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin. Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin.
Is he saying dana or anaskit?
Well, there's, okay.
Atayot anaskik chinach.
Anaskik.
Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat. Anaskik chinachtatuyat.
Slow it way down.
Anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin.
There's something. This. Danaskikchi. Is that what he's saying?
Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat.
Something like this, maybe. What are you folks hearing for this last word we're trying to get?
Atayot anaskik chinachtat. Atayot anaskik chinach.
Danaskikchi?
Anaskik.
Oh.
Sounds like hit.
Oh, what if we had aya danaskikchi anachtach aya yatayim? Maybe. I don't know what the touch would be doing there, though.
Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin. Atayot anaskik chinachtatuyat aihin.
Okay. Here's my theory. This is why sleep runs through the body, because of hot water. Now, sihchi would mean that you're looking at something like sihi or zihi. Means probably not to get into the verb dictionary and see. Oops. So here's he. We've got falling, dropping, taking off of a plane. Oh, I was actually looking for that the other day. Okay. Worry, concern. Then we get a bunch with those are the ones with the classifier. Unless you were looking at something like this, but then that wouldn't explain why there's the maybe take place. Huh. That would make sense. Okay, so if it was that, then you would have about here the yeah.
Yeah. I mean, could that da be ya?
อาเจียตันนักเจนักท่าเจียตายหิน
Sure sounds like da to me.
อาเจียตันนักเจนักท่าเจียตายหิน
I think it's something like so then you've got touch, which I would expect to be ta, but it's doing the verb. Yeah, this is it's a big sentence. I think we're close. So, and and it could be something like that, where that's just built into the verb too.
Sort of like it is running through the body.
Yeah, but like so running, we pretty consistently have a sh classifier. Wujaki.
Mhm.
So this S classifier, like the other thing we could do is we could get into Lear's verbs and see if he has anything under sihi as well. Let's just try that and see what we find.
It falls through the body.
Yeah, it could be falling. It could be I do think we're getting some sort of meaning in terms of like it helps you sleep. That's what I would think, anyways. So if we go down to he, okay, so we've got ʼaduwóos'i. There's an S classifier falling down. Uhi, uahich. See, yawasahich, but I'm not hearing shawahich. So some of the hints we're looking for is what happens when a noun gets put on this, and then what happens when we get an S classifier. I don't know. This is okay. That's a good one. We're gonna have a few of these where we're just like, let's think about it. And so I'm gonna put something in here like, ʻaduwatánk. So I'm just gonna separate these for now. And then I will put it in like that. Oops. All kinds of wild symbols. Okay. And let's do one or two more.
Atuk ʻaduwatánk asuknuch ʼéitx ʻaduwatánk. Atuk ʻaduwatánk asuknuch ʻéitx ʻaduwatánk. Atuk.
So we get a tuk. Has anybody heard that one before? Like when you start a sentence with it. A tuk.
I know I should know it. I just can't quite remember.
Well, yeah, I've got it written down in like some obscure place. Let me see if I can find it before we run out of time. And then I don't see it, or maybe I do. Maybe it's under Let's see if I wrote it down somewhere. I might not have. I think I did. Okay. Yeah, I do. Okay. Huh. I don't know how I remembered where I put that, but this is something I need to put in the dictionary. So atuk, if you start a sentence with that, it means furthermore. And so it's one of these kind of narrative devices. Like we've talked about that. Like as we do this work, some of the things that this kind of work shows us, which is how do you put the language together into like this, a complex string of thoughts, because atuk, so like furthermore, or what's more, it depends on how we want to translate that. And then we say,
ʻaduwatánk asuknuch. ʻaduwatánk asuknuch. ʻaduwatánk asuknuch ʻéitx ʻaduwatánk. ʻéitx ʻaduwatánk. ʻéitx ʻaduwatánk.
ye adayakanich. Something like that. I'll go back and listen to Tom.
ʻéitx ʻaduwatánk.
Oh, yeah.
ʻaduwatánk. ʻaduwatánk.
Really?
ʻaduwatánk.
Something like this. That's not what I'd expect.
ʻaduwatánk.
Huh, okay. So there's some interesting things going on. Oh, hold on.
ʻaduwatánk. And that's
Okay. So then he talks about putting honey in it. Oops, I lost my spot.
ʻatuk ʻatakataihin asuknuch ʻa'ish qayeta tukhanuch.
I'm gonna listen to this one because it's doing something.
ʻatuk ʻatakatai.
It's doing something I don't expect. Which comes down to like we talked about this ye yawaka and ye ayausaka. And did we talk about the differences between these?
Yes.
Okay. So coming back to our notes, there's a little bit more to this. So we've got ye yawaka and ye ayausaka. And what are these? How would we translate these?
Yeah, Yaosaka is said to somebody.
They said this to them, right? It's just a third person, so we'll just leave it as them. And what about ye yawaka?
Exact quote.
Yeah, so then it's basically saying they said this, right? And then we're going to have both of these, we're going to end up with a quotation mark type of thing. But then there's a couple other things that are also doing this same thing, but what makes these two verbs a little bit even more complicated is you have ye adayaka, and then I guess you do have. Okay, here it is. This is what we're hearing. This is wild. Okay. Because I forgot that this has two prefixes in it. Wow. Okay. And then I'm going to show you one more thing, and then we'll start to wrap it up. Okay, where's the last one? And then let me switch the order of these so that I'm being consistent. So then you have ye ayaka and ye adayaka. Do we know what these are?
I said it.
Not quite, but that's, and so these are both going to be third person.
Ayaka, an imperfective form.
Yes. So they are saying this, right? So it's happening right now. And this is the exact same thing. They are saying this to them. Okay. So what gets complicated is you get a classifier switch to say, okay, now you're saying a certain thing to somebody, right? So you're adding an object, and it's just a little bit unusual, I think, in terms of how this is functioning. It's a little different than some other things work. But then each of these have an imperfective that is different. This one goes from ya to ka. So it's the same verb theme, but you just kind of have to remember that the thematic prefix magically changes. And then this one has a whole different structure. It's how you have da ya and a zero classifier. So in this case, ye adayaka, they are saying this to them, and it's an imperfective form. So coming back, that's why I was getting a little lost, as there should be a ya right there. Ye dayadakanuch.
ʻatuk ʻatakataihin asuknuch ʻa'ish qayeta tukhanuch.
And I don't know who he's saying it to, but you could say he always sipped hot water, my dad, though this is what he always says to them. And I don't know who he's saying it to. Maybe it's to the mother. We'll probably get to that part next week when you tune in to Getting Confused in Elon, Tlingit style. Any thoughts or questions before we go?
Can I see the previous line?
And just so you folks know, I guess I didn't say this before, but if you go back to our class website and re-download the Elan file, you'll always get this most recent version. I guess I forgot to tell you that.
Sheesh.
But I am saving them directly in that same folder where that link goes to. So for both 1, 2, and 3, they'll always save to their same spots.
And could you show us how you make it slow down?
Yeah, so you kind of got this whole series of buttons right here. So, and what these buttons do, if you wanted to just sort of see the whole thing, and I think you could change the font size for all of these. So you can scroll through all of your entries, right? So I could put all of the tlingit in here if I wanted to see what the whole thing looks like. Under text, I could do the same thing, except instead of scrolling, it's all just sort of separated by these little dots. And I could see the whole thing if I want to, including all these ones that aren't done yet. So, you know, almost halfway there. So be it. Subtitles are a pretty neat way to do this collectively. So if I click here, even though we ran out of room right here, you could still see it up here. And so sometimes the subtitles helps when you're working collaboratively. Keep them open like this. I wouldn't worry about these next 4. The last one is controls. And under controls, this is where you find the rate. So you can slow it down. Oh. Whoops. That's not what he always says to them. That's what people always... Okay. So there is some stuff to figure out here, which probably comes in context later. So when he says ʼaitx, I think he's talking about who's always sipping the hot water. And then ʼaduwatánk, people are always telling my father this thing. And then I think we're going to get what that thing is next. So this work is so interesting because Tlingit is a very big language, but I promise if you can keep doing this type of work, it puts a lot of stuff together for you. Even if your brain feels like I'm not getting very much, you are getting an awful lot, but it's just the whole language coming at you. So again, we've been sipping on water for 3 years now, almost 3 years. And now we're just jumping in a river and it's just flowing very fast. So it's all good. Okay.
Sheesh.
Okay. ʼaduwatánk naskigichana gulchish claim.
Gnalchish.
Gnalchish. Linquatshiltin.
Equati.
Gnalchish.
Echa.
Gnalchish.